This is one of those stories that's so bizarre, it sounds like it came straight out of a movie. Today, we're talking about Steven Stainer, the kid who was kidnapped, escaped, and became a hero. So, here it is. On December 4th, 1972, in Merced, California, 7-year-old Steven Stainer was walking home from school. Out of nowhere, a man named Edward Murphy approached him, claiming he was collecting donations for a church. Steven, being a trusting child, believed him. Murphy offered to give Steven a ride home, and he accepted. But instead of taking him home, Murphy brought Steven to his accomplice, Kenneth Parnell. Parnell drove Steven to a remote cabin in Catheys Valley, far from his home. Steven was now a prisoner. For the next 7 years, Parnell held Steven captive. He brainwashed Steven, telling him that his parents no longer wanted him. Parnell even gave Steven a new name, Dennis Parnell. Steven was forced to live this lie, moving from place to place and attending different schools under his new identity. Kenneth Parnell was a man with a troubled past. He had a history of criminal behavior and had already served time for armed robbery. He was a master manipulator, using a mix of fear, coercion, and twisted affection to control Steven. Parnell worked various odd jobs and moved frequently, making it hard for anyone to track him down. He lived a life on the fringes of society, often relying on petty crimes and deceit to get by. Steven didn't try to escape earlier because Parnell had convinced him that no one was looking for him. Parnell manipulated Steven by giving him small freedoms and a dog, creating an illusion of a somewhat normal life. He would take Steven on trips, even allowing him to interact with other children occasionally. This twisted sense of normalcy made Steven's situation even more complex. But Steven was trapped, both physically and mentally. Steven attended various schools under the name Dennis Parnell. His teachers and classmates noticed he was a quiet, withdrawn boy, but no one suspected the truth. Parnell kept Steven's life as isolated as possible, fearing discovery. Steven's longing for his family never disappeared, but Parnell's brainwashing made him doubt his memories and his own identity. In February 1980, everything changed. Parnell brought home another kidnapped boy, 5-year-old Timothy White. Parnell had enlisted a teenage friend of Steven's to help kidnap Timothy, showing just how far his manipulation extended. This new abduction was a turning point for Steven. Seeing Timothy, a vulnerable and scared little boy, reminded Steven of himself when he was first taken. Steven saw himself in Timothy and knew he couldn't let this happen to another child. He decided to take action. Steven had grown physically and emotionally stronger over the years, and his protective instincts kicked in. He befriended Timothy and assured him they would find a way out. Steven started planning their escape meticulously, waiting for the right moment when Parnell would be away. On the night of March 1st, 1980, while Parnell was working a night shift, Steven saw his chance. He took Timothy and they ran. They hitchhiked over 40 miles to Ukiah, California. It was a cold night, and Steven wrapped Timothy in his jacket to keep him warm. Steven didn't know exactly where he was, but he remembered the way back to his hometown. They were picked up by a passing car, and Steven managed to explain their situation, convincing the driver to take them to Ukiah. Eventually, they found a police station. Steven walked in and told the officers, "I know my first name is Steven." This moment changed everything. The officers were initially skeptical, but Steven's detailed account of his abduction and the events that followed soon convinced them. They quickly realized who Steven was and contacted his family. The reunion with his family was an emotional and complex one. Steven's parents, Kay and Delbert Stainer, were overwhelmed with joy and relief, but they also faced the challenge of reconnecting with a son who had been gone for 7 years. Steven's siblings had grown up without him, and he had missed crucial years of his own development. The Stainer family had to navigate these difficult emotions and rebuild their bonds. Kenneth Parnell was arrested and convicted of kidnapping both Steven and Timothy. He received a 7-year sentence for Steven's kidnapping and additional time for Timothy's, but many believed the punishment didn't fit the crime. Parnell's manipulative nature and the psychological scars he inflicted on Steven were not fully addressed by the legal system. Steven became somewhat of a local hero. His story was widely covered in the media, and a TV movie was made about him called I Know My First Name is Steven. Despite the attention, Steven just wanted a normal life, which was hard to achieve given his past. The public fascination with his story often made it difficult for him to move on. After his return, Stephen faced challenges with his identity and the trauma he experienced. He struggled with feelings of guilt and confusion, often questioning why he had been chosen by Parnell and why he couldn't escape sooner. He found it hard to fit in, both at home and at school. Therapy and support from his family helped, but the scars of his ordeal remained. Stephen married and had 2 children, trying to create a stable and loving environment for his own family. He worked hard to provide for them, but the weight of his past never fully left him. He became an advocate for child abduction awareness, hoping to prevent others from experiencing what he had gone through. Tragedy struck again in 1989 when Stephen died in a motorcycle accident at the age of 24. It was a heartbreaking end to a life that had already endured so much. His death left a void in his family and those who had followed his story. Stephen's legacy, however, lives on. His bravery in saving Timothy White is a testament to his strength and courage. His story raised awareness about child abduction and highlighted the importance of hope and resilience. Timothy White grew up to lead a normal life, always remembering Stephen as his savior. The 2 families, the Whites and the Stainers, remained connected, bound by the extraordinary circumstances that brought them together.